Welcome to Biblical Christian Content, where we like to keep the content biblical. Let's go.
So we're demigods, pretty much, Jesus said. We're gods just with flaws.
I have to petition everyone that's watching this video. If you desire to help me reach more people with biblical truth, then do me a favor. At minimum, hit the like and hit the subscribe to generate more push, to get biblical Christian content to more hearts, more minds, and more souls. Thank you. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back, Biblical Christian Content. Welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to do something different. I'm just going to run through this video clip. It's about 5 minutes long, and I'm just going to interject every now and then and just kind of bring light and definitely correct these poor representations of the Bible, God, and Christianity. There is some other talk about other gods in the mix of this, but the majority of what they talk about does involve God in the Bible, and I'm sorry, they're a terrible representation of what the Bible represents and what Christianity represents. Their presentation of it and their discussion is so off base that it's ugly. But so let's try to clean it up. Stay tuned.
Then what should we know that what's bigger than us? God. After that, what's bigger than us?
Well,
So
that's
this-
what a lot of people believe the problem is that a lot of people don't have God, and they substitute God for other things that mimic the same kind of control religion has, and ideologies are one of those things.
Listen,
You see, people like Joe Rogan, they try to talk about a certain subject, and when they don't like that subject, they label it in certain ways, and he thinks he's slick, but they label it in certain ways, and people that are wise can see right through that. He'll bring in to the conversation God and religion and slap the label of control on it. Where in the whole entire Bible does it say like God is out to control you? We as Christian, or me speaking as a Christian, I joyfully and with joy in my heart and gladness, I offer up worship to God, and I read the Bible and I pray, because I've seen God move in my life on the inside to change me on the inside, and of course to answer prayers, come through, provide, and lead me on the outside. So when you see people like that, he tries to be slick, and right off the jump, he brings into the conversation religion, and he ties religion into control. Who gave you that idea? He's given that idea. Be careful.
I'm a Muslim, right? So my daughter said, God, Jesus said we were gods, but we can die like normal kings and princes. I said, yeah, but get fuck no. I said, look it up, because I'm always doing it. I'm always confrontational with my daughter. I said, look it up, show me it. Like, where is it? And she's looking through the Bible, she's looking. I said, you can't find it, can you? And she's waiting. And then she finds that Jesus said, we all are gods, but we could fall just like any king or prince once we're hit, we're gonna die. We're living, so we're demigods, pretty much, Jesus said. We're gods just with flaws.
All right. This is what happens when someone who doesn't know the Bible, someone who doesn't study the Bible, and the Bible is, there's certain things on surface level. If you look at the book of Proverbs, it's pretty cut and dry in most cases, not all. But if you read a proverb that says something like, as water reflects the face, so a man's heart reflects the man. I remember the first time I ever read that. And when you read a proverb like that, as water reflects the face, so a man's heart reflects the man, it's easy. When you look in water, if you were to stand over at the side of a lake and look into the water or a pool, you can see who you are by the reflection. And God is saying, by your heart, that is who a man truly is, what is on the inside, that governs you and guides you. So that's pretty simple. Now, the scripture he's referring to, it's Psalm 82, and Jesus also quotes it in the New Testament. So in Psalm 82, it's not talking about, because if you go back to the first verse of this psalm that Asaph writes, it says, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. God is not saying, and when he writes gods, it's small g. That doesn't mean that we are truly gods, or he's actually referring to angelic beings and false gods. Like it says, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgments. God is surrounded by angels. And then later on in that psalm, which is what Mike Tyson's referring to, he said, I said, you are God, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince. So he makes a clear distinction that nevertheless, like men, you shall die. But yet and still, he says, you are God. So clearly, he's not equating men to be gods, because he makes a clear distinction. And that's referring to a charge against the angels. And as it clearly says earlier in the chapter, Psalm 82, just in the first verse alone, God has taken his place in the divine council. So God sits as ruler over all that is divine and all that is, spiritual, godly. And he rules over all things.
And so since you know you have flaws, but our only flaw is dying, truly. Because we know we could be allowed to be forgiven for everything we did, but we can't be forgiven for dying. We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And what do you think happens when we die? We're like trees, like when the plants die, and then the summertime comes, they come
Blossom.
back to life, they blossom again. Is that what human beings do, you think?
What's fascinating about the
How you
Bible
know?
is
What
that
makes you
stuff.
think that doesn't happen?
Nobody knows,
No one
right?
knows. No one knows. I know there's God, though. I know there's
Yeah,
a
but I
God.
feel like, that's like we're like plants. We're dead. Now it's time for, we die and God creates. Whatever you do, God's going to create. You play football, he's going to create. You lose games, he's going to create. You win championships, he's going to create. Whatever happens, God is creating.
Yeah.
The wild thing about the Bible is that it's thousands of years old and people are still reading it. They're still reading this thing that was the framework for civilization.
You know what that tells you? That people are born to worship.
But make sure you know your Bible and know the Bible when you talk about it. Because one thing I want to say is, Joe Rogan, this is very early on in this podcast. It's Mike Tyson's podcast. But very early on, they are talking about cancel culture. And Joe Rogan's being a hypocrite because he's doing exactly what he said cancel culture does. He said, now these days, everyone has a voice on Twitter, on whatever. He said back in the day, in order to get someone canceled, you had to write letters to a movie studio or to a business or a news corporate. You had to come together and write letters and organize. Whereas now you just jump on the internet and try to, maybe target someone and dislike them because of something they said or did. And he's doing the same thing because Joe Rogan is using, and he said, you can use it to try and hurt people. Joe Rogan's doing exactly what he said. So he's being a hypocrite because he goes on his podcast, and this podcast, for instance, he talks about something he doesn't know, and he portrays it to be what he thinks it is to the audience. So to someone who doesn't know Christianity well or know the Bible well, if they take what he says on face value, which is what a lot of them do, it's the same thing that he says is wrong about cancel culture, because they hop on the internet to get a voice and they try to lambast someone. And, people eat it up because it's the Twitter warriors and the keyboard warriors, they call them. They kind of pile on to someone. So they try to create a narrative. And when he talks about something he doesn't know, he does the same thing. And to ignorant listeners, they eat it up, unfortunately. But that's why I'm here. Hello. Bam. Mike Tyson just hit a nail on the head. I'm going to make this 2 parts because I don't have the time to put all this together. But if I saw this on the History Channel a long time ago. Mike Tyson brought up a good point, and he kind of stopped Joe in his tracks because, again, Joe is trying to he's trying to peg something as oddly out of date and totally irrelevant. But the reason that the Bible is still being read, because it is so relevant. The Bible talks about gossip. It talks about not being lazy. It talks about sin and the shortcomings of man and how we need forgiveness because we do sin. It talks about how to guide your marriage. It talks about how you should conduct yourself and control your mouth. All these things are spoken of in the Bible, and for good reason. It doesn't go away because it's the truth. It doesn't go away because the truth will last. And it won't go away because the Bible said it ain't going to go away. So if they wanted to get rid of the Bible, if they wanted to get rid of the Christian church and Christians, it would have happened already. Like he said, they're reading this from thousands of years ago. Exactly. Because whatever God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I wanted to point out what Mike Tyson said. He said, that shows you we're made to worship. Joe doesn't think that, because he would have never took the conversation in that direction. Mike Tyson jumped in and said that. And I want to tell you something. On the History Channel years ago, I saw it said that 80 to 90% of all civilizations, ancient civilizations, you're talking Egypt, Africa, Asia, everywhere, they find either paintings, markings, writings, hieroglyphics, and artifacts that pertain to the worship of a god. That whether it's, paintings on a wall in a cave, whatever it is, 80 to 90% of civilizations are somehow in some way drawn to God. It said that in that documentary. And if you apply that to what Mike Tyson said, it kind of makes sense. We are made to worship. Now we just got to make sure we're worshiping the right God. Part 2 coming. God bless.